Hey, and we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. Joining us now on the phone, Republican candidate for Georgia Governor Hunter Hill. Mr. Hill, how are you this morning?
I'm great, Brian. I hope you're doing well. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Well, it was good to see you Saturday night at the debate, the ninth Congressional District GOP debate over there in Hall County. And all 7 candidates were attended the debate. Let me ask you a question. You're a state senator for 5 years. You resigned your seat in effort to continue your run for governor, to put all your time into that. Is that the reason why you resigned the seat? And how do you think that's worked out for you as far as your run for governor?
Look, in business and life, I've found you can't do multiple things well. You've got to have focus. And I launched my campaign as a senator, but I realized as we began to catch traction that if we were going to finish strong and win the primary, I would need to focus on my campaign for governor. If I were to be in the Senate, I would be wanting to do what is best for my constituents, which is a small group of people in Cobb County and Fulton County. And it would distract me from my campaign for governor. If I were to be a senator and focus entirely on my race for governor, then I would let down my constituents. And so I decided to just focus on my campaign for governor because we are a true conservative candidate. We have a chance to win and actually move Georgia forward for the values and principles we believe in. And I didn't want to let this opportunity pass.
What if some say that you avoided some votes that may have been controversial, or you avoided taking a stand on some issues that came out of the last session, and that you were not there to stand up for some of the things some of your opponents are having to answer for?
Yeah, well, while I was a senator, I voted on things that people might find controversial, but these are core values of mine. Things like religious liberty. I voted against the largest tax increase that Casey Cagle pushed and that Michael Williams voted for. So we've got a solid conservative record. I was not doing anything but focusing on the future and making sure that we could continue to cast our true conservative leadership vision for Georgia.
Well, let me ask you this then. So you did not vote for HB 170, the transportation bill that increased taxes. You say you voted no on that.
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask you, because that was my comment. There is what if your opponents or people out there say, well, you don't have the transportation bill, so many different things in this last session, you don't have to answer for your vote, and you avoided that. So let me just ask you on the other side, that gives you maybe an opportunity to answer. For example, when it may come back up, and I do know that religious freedom in Georgia may not be getting the forefront in the governor's office today, the current governor's office today. So that being said, Saturday, Casey Cagle, lieutenant governor, used the word germane when it comes to the foster care bill and attaching the adoption agency, religious faith-based adoption protection agency. Where do you stand on a bill like that? And would a Governor Hunter Hill sign a bill like that? And a lot of candidates, and I'm getting to the end of this question, I know it's so long, but a lot of candidates I continue to hear religious freedom, and then it just seems like it dies once they get elected. Where do you stand? What would you really do, and what kind of bill would you sign?
Well, I've already committed to sign the federal RFRA language. I voted for it 3 times in the Senate. I believe we should protect Christian families so that they can adopt children that they want to adopt, and not be forcing children to go into homes that run counter to their religious beliefs. And so that's very important. But let me tell you why I'm so convicted on this. You know, I fought 3 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, and so I've been to countries that don't protect your religious liberties. And I found that when you don't protect someone's religious liberties, you don't protect any of their liberties. So this is a foundational constitutional principle in our country. We've let the left downgrade it and undermine it. And we've got to have a governor that's willing to stand up and talk about the merits of religious liberty. And it's in fact the reason that we have great prosperity in this country, that we have protected religious liberty. So I will be our greatest defender of that right to exercise one's religious beliefs. And we just need to get it's a simple bill. We just need to get it signed, and as governor, I'll get it signed. You
said Saturday, and I don't want to misquote you, Mr. Hill, at the debate, that you did try to fight the increasing budget. In the 5 years that you were in the Senate, and obviously excluding this year, how many of those 5 years, because it did increase every year, how many of those 5 years did you vote yes on the budget?
I voted yes to the budget every year. And here's the bottom line. Especially on the transportation bill year, it was 2015, and my 3rd year in the Senate, that's when I really started to fight and say, look, if transportation is a priority, then we ought to fund it out of the general fund. We don't need to raise taxes for that, which is only 5% of the budget. If we care about it, we want to prioritize it, we need to find other areas of the budget to cut from, because a tax increase for 5% of the budget is a justification of how we spend the other 95. And so bottom line is this. Yes, I voted for the bill, even though I didn't agree with all of the principles of the spending. I voted for the budget bill. But here's the thing. About 70% of what was spent is on things that are core competencies of government and things that we need to be focusing on, educating our kids, public safety, transportation. So to vote no, yes, it would have been me sending a message that I didn't agree with the increases, but it also would have been me saying that I don't think we should fund government. And so I decided to take the bad with the good on those votes for the budget, even though I was frustrated. But keep in mind, that's why I'm running for governor. Because if we don't change the way that we do business, and the governor has the ability to lead on budget issues and on other transformational items within government, then we're going to go off a fiscal cliff, because the states are inextricably tied to the federal government, and we have a $21 trillion debt at the federal level. And until we get a limited government governor, then we're not going to change the trajectory of our nation, and that's why I'm running for governor.
Okay, so how when you say, you tried to fight the increasing budget, so let's say you're elected governor, how would you stop? And I use the word stop because tax revenue, in fact, this year, tax revenues at one of the highest in the state of Georgia, in fact, to where they had a surplus that they had to do an amendment to spend the surplus and where they were going to put it at. And now we have a $26 billion, $5.5 billion in increases just in 5 years. How do you stop that kind of budget increase and still manage the growth of the state of Georgia?
Yeah, so that's great question. And the bottom line is this. As a senator, you're one of 56. As a House member, you're one of 180. So there's 230 members in the General Assembly, but there's only one governor. And so you truly get to cast that vision and be very clear about what your priorities are. And for me, I've said from the beginning, to have a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers, we ought to be focusing on the core competencies of government. And for me, that's public safety, transportation, and education. And I'm talking mostly about K-12 education. So the reality is everything that's not in those 3 categories that we need to bring to the table and consider cutting or reforming or changing the expectation of how we're delivering results. So take healthcare. Medicaid, for example, is almost 30% of the budget. We need to back up and say this is a very vulnerable aspect of our population, but are we delivering results for them? In other words, they're our most expensive population to care for and our least healthy. So we're not delivering results for them, yet we're spending billions of dollars. We got to change the way we do business. Welfare, food stamps. Why are we paying our citizens to do nothing? It's creating illegal immigration, and it's undermining their God-given talents, gifts, and abilities to be able to add value into the marketplace. So these are the philosophical conversations that we need to start having, and they are best had and led by a governor.
Well, let me ask this, and we'll get off the budget. And the only reason I want to ask this one more question concerning the budget is you made mention that for all 5 years you voted yes, and there were some things that you highly opposed, but then you had things like education and several on the list there that you did not want to vote no against. So a budget, a budget even on the state level is more or less an omnibus appropriations bill that pushes everything together and is signed under one. Would you think about dividing it out into department budgets and approving each one? I think Texas, and I'm not trying to say we ought to mirror Texas, I think they do a budget every 2 years, and it's negotiated 2 years at a time, every department. So I'm not trying to say that, but would you be looking at other ways maybe to present a budget? Is that open?
It is open. It's something I would consider. The bottom line is the governor has, in fact, in many cases, more authority than people would like on the budget process. But again, that's why I'm running for governor, to cast a truly conservative vision for our state and to show people that we have the leadership ability to get these values and principles implemented into policy. And so as governor, I'm going to use the historical nature of the office to implement our values and principles. So we might need to separate individual items out and say, look, we're going to focus on K-12 first. Let's fund K-12 and do it, as not an omnibus bill, as you mentioned. But I hadn't made my mind up on how we're going to do it. I just know that my top priorities in the budget process are going to be public safety, transportation, and education.
Okay, let's move to how to create economic development, because that came up Saturday. You made 3 points. First, you said eliminate the state income tax. Eliminate the state income tax.
Correct.
How do you explain how you eliminate the state income tax, but yet bring in enough revenue to the state to operate the kind of budget that we have?
Yeah, I want to have a broad-based sales tax. Call it it's most closely aligned with the fair tax. We've been talking about this for years. 70% of the economy is driven by consumption, the things that people buy, and it's very congruent or aligned with freedom. People have the choices and options to go buy and purchase goods and services, and that's the best way to bring in revenues. So 70% of the economy is driven by consumption, yet consumption taxes are only on 30% of our economy. So you expand consumption taxes onto more items, and you've got to raise the rate, but you don't have to raise the rates as high as the income tax, which is at 6%. A 6% income tax taxes the entirety of one's entire income, whereas a consumption tax only taxes that which one purchases. Now, we got to do it over time, and I want to do it more like Tennessee. I don't want to get on property because our property taxes are high enough already, and it runs counter to getting away from taxing income and capital and investment. But the bottom line is this. The income tax only taxes honest Georgians, and I want to take advantage of visitors to our state, folks in the underground economy, and illegal immigrants. And when we tax everyone fairly across the board based on their consumption habits, we bring good revenues into the state, and we let hardworking Georgians keep more of their money to choose how they want to live.
All right, K-12 free market. No, wait a minute. Before I get there, you said also the second one, double investment in transportation without raising taxes. How do you do that, double the investment without raising taxes, and what are you pulling it away from?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Let's just use $25 billion as the number for the state revenue. As you're lowering the income tax, you're replacing revenues with more consumption taxes. Okay, so call the budget $25 billion, just for sake of this argument. We know that about 5% of that $25 billion is going to transportation. Well, what I would like to do over the course of my first term is prioritize transportation at a higher rate without raising taxes to do it, just managing the budget better and taking from areas that we've discussed, looking at Medicaid reform, looking at welfare and food stamp reform, looking at higher education reform. There's a huge bureaucracy in higher education that we can look at to make cuts. So there's a number of areas where we can look at to make the cuts that are necessary. And I know we can get another $1 billion out of the budget to prioritize into transportation with the net effect of doubling our investment in transportation, all without raising taxes.
So that's very concerning. I mean, you didn't say this quote, but are you saying there's $1 billion that could get moved into other areas, that you really feel there's $1 billion that could get moved in some more areas that would be, more beneficial to the state? I mean, you said you can move $1 billion into transportation that's not currently there from other areas of the budget?
I do believe that, and again, this is over a term, so that's 4 years.
Okay,
I believe that we can do $250 million a year.
All right, I get it, sir. I didn't mean to say $1 billion one time. So I respect that. So you're looking over a term of being able to move about $250 million a year over into transportation.
That is correct.
Okay, the third thing that you brought up, because we're looking at economic development in the state, the third thing that you brought up is implementing K-12, implementing free market principles in education, giving families more choices. Explain what you mean by that and why that would be a benefit for economic development in Georgia.
Well, let me answer the last question first. Why K-12 is directly relatable to economic development is when we are educating a child, we're preparing them for the future. We need critical thinking, prepared individuals, and this includes character and discipline. It's not just test scores. But so bottom line is when somebody graduates high school, they're either going to go get a technical college degree, a technical skill, if you will. They're going to get a 4-year degree, or they're going to go right into the workplace. And they need to be prepared for the rigors of life. And so elevating K-12 education ensures that we have a workforce that is prepared for the future. And that's what money is looking for. Money comes into states based on the tax and regulatory environment, based on the goods and services, if you will, being able to move around, which is our transportation network, and then also the workforce. So it's directly attributable to economic development if we have solid K-12 graduates. Now, how are we going to lift up K-12? Is right now it's a closed government-run, government-centric solution. Public schools are currently. Charter schools have been a free market principle, but we don't fully fund them. So number one, we need to fully fund charter schools. We need to change the QBE formula in Georgia to make it more student-centric. And then finally, I think we should use a portion of the money for some kids that their traditional public school is not working for them, and empower them with the resources that we're already spending, because we know how much we're spending per child, and let them choose where they want to deploy those resources and educate their children.
Well, let me ask you this: I know we've only got a couple minutes left here, and the reason I wanted to bring up economic development, it's my understanding that representatives from Amazon for HQ2, they were in Atlanta Friday this past week, looking at some of the locations, some follow-up meetings. What say you as far as any kind of abatement, tax abatement, any kind of deals that would be made to Amazon to bring them here to Atlanta? Where do you stand on that?
I think that we all would, or not, I'd love to see Amazon come here, okay? But I don't want to give away the farm to bring them here. We should not be using monies from the public treasury to buy industry to come here. What you'd want to do is create a very balanced and fair and predictable marketplace with your tax and regulatory policy, et cetera, so that capital and investment and business wants to grow here outside of the purview of the government. I mean, think about this. The Department of Economic Development cannot see possibly all of the things that are occurring in the marketplace to be able to go and individually buy the best ideas. So I want to be on the short list for every company in the country to move here, if that makes sense. Instead of just focusing on these big behemoth companies, let's make sure small business has a good chance to build here and grow here in Georgia. Let's focus on them. And you do that by eliminating the Georgia state income tax, elevating transportation, and then empowering families to have more choices in K-12 education. And that's my vision for Georgia.
Let me wrap up with this, because I'm speaking to all the candidates that will respond, and we appreciate you responded this morning. But you at the debate Saturday night, anytime your name was brought up or anything said about you in the debate, you got a response time. It seemed like Michael Williams wanted to make sure that between you and Casey Cagle, you got a lot of response time Saturday night. But in that, you said, as far as resigning from your state Senate seat there, and beholden, my words, beholden to a small group of constituents that you have there. I know you didn't say anything negative about your voters there, but I'm just saying you wanted to get out and you're going to be serving all of Georgia. That being said, a lot of accusations being made about campaign finance. So you do have your campaign finance report, a lot of what some would consider big donors, some special interests from some wealthier areas that you've taken in a lot of money. He even brought up, and I don't know the name, sir, it's McGuire Woods. Maybe you can comment to that. But what say you with all of the career politician accusations and where you're getting your money to fund your campaign?
I appreciate that question very much. I told my team when we launched our campaign in April that we had to earn the right to be attacked, because I knew I was basically irrelevant in the sense that, you know, no one knew who we were around the state. But we've been casting a very conservative vision, and we've gotten traction, and now we're in second place in the polls, and we're getting closer to Casey Cagle. But people like Michael Williams haven't gotten traction around the state, and so of course they're attacking us. And here's the bottom line. From the beginning, when you're running a Republican primary, you have to get the support of basically friends, family, and what I call believers, people that believe in your vision for Georgia. And the people that have contributed money to our campaign because they believe in a truly conservative vision are people that have had their head down building their families and businesses for the last 40 years. And they've really never really participated in politics. But they're really excited about our vision. I don't have lobbyist and special interest money. All that money is gone with Cagle. Okay, we have hardworking Georgians that are not traditionally part of the political process. Yes, they're successful. They've done well in life. That's how they're able to give us resources. But what they're really interested in is having a truly conservative vision for Georgia, and that's why they're supporting us. And I'm grateful for their financial support, because I want to get our message out to as many people as we can, and that requires fired up volunteers, which we have over 700 of, and we also need the resources to be on TV and in the mailboxes and on the radio. So I'm proud of both our hardworking team and the hardworking Georgians who have contributed to our campaign.
We promised you 20 minutes, but I want to ask this, if you can bear with me.
Yeah, go ahead.
You were in the Senate for 5 years, okay? So you understand the rules of the Senate, and you see different bills come up and get merged together with different language or amendments. You've seen that often. So talking about religious liberty, religious freedom, the adoption, faith-based adoption agency protection bill or whatever, and the foster care bill, Casey Cagle, the lieutenant governor, said that the amendment was not germane to the foster care bill, meaning it did not have anything that one with the other, so he didn't bring it to the floor for a vote. Somebody else says that's a gray area, that the lieutenant governor does have the latitude to take a gray area like that and move those together. What say you when he was explaining why the amendment for faith-based adoption agencies did not get merged into foster care? What say you when he answered that Saturday?
Well, let me tell you why I had the the courage and the decision to run. Obviously, I felt led. I'm a Christian. I gave my life to the Lord in the 8th grade, and I felt led to do this. But I also had to look at the field. Why am I running against Casey Cagle? I mean, the bottom line is he either lacks the conservative ideology of conservatives, or he lacks the leadership to get our ideals implemented into policy, or he lacks both. Either way, that's what gave me the desire to do this. I would have absolutely had the leadership to get the bill through the process. As governor, it'll be much easier to get something like that through. But again, it goes back to our Christian values, which are under attack by the left, and we need leaders that are going to be willing to stand up and fight to restore them. And with things that are going on from the federal level on down, with the liberal media justifying every move from the left, this is going to be a difficult fight. And that is why we need conservatives to coalesce and get behind a candidate that has proven not only that they've been willing to fight overseas to defend the Constitution, but also fight for our values and principles in the state Senate, and then also has the leadership experience through business and other things to get the ideals we believe in implemented into policy. So we've got to protect faith-based organizations in adoption, because it's foundational to, look, Brian, we're never going to reduce the size and scope of government until we start elevating ministries and nonprofits and have stronger families. And we don't do that by a bigger government. We do it with a more limited government, where ministries and nonprofits can be out there helping and healing the broken and the lost. And we need a smaller government for that to take place.
Well, Mr. Hunter Hill, we appreciated you this morning. We do have another guest coming up at 9:30, so we're going to have to run. We appreciate it. We're going to have you on anytime you'll be on with us, and we thank you for coming on and answering our questions.
Brian, thanks for the opportunity, and I hope your listeners will go to votehunterhill.com and learn more about us, and hope to see you again soon.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much. Okay,
Thanks,
so
Brian.
that's our second guest this morning for Republican candidates for governor. We're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to have about 25 minutes of the Georgia Speaker of the House, David Ralston, is going to come on and just tell us a little bit what happened in this past session, what he felt he would like to have gotten to the floor that maybe did not get there, what they're still working on, and especially want to talk to him about the last session with Governor Nathan Deal. So let's take a break, and when we return, we'll have David Ralston, Speaker of the House, on with us.